Season 1 of Doctor Who is now well underway, and in this episode, we're going to cover the first 4 TV episodes of that season. We're also going to cover a free comic book day issue by Titan Comics, and the first part of a brand new Doctor Who magazine cover. What important information we learn in them, and where do they fit in relation to each other in terms of the 15th Doctor's timeline? That's what this series is here to delve into. Welcome to the 15th Doctor Canon Catchup. Hi, welcome to Culture Filter. I'm the Fill-In Filter, and this is the series where we look at every story featuring the 15th Doctor from all mediums that have come out in roughly the last month. When we learn what might be relevant or link in to other stories and try to construct a timeline of the 15th Doctor's life as we go. We'll come to the comics, but first let's start with the TV episodes. Space Babies. As predicted, this follows on immediately from the events of Church on Ruby Road. No time for any adventure in between those two episodes, although possibly a gap towards the end of Church on Ruby Road for the Doctor to have some solo adventures slot into, as he has changed t-shirts by the time Ruby enters the TARDIS. But that's for another day if we ever get any solo 15 stories we need a space for. We haven't yet had any of those, so let's move on. Space Babies sees Ruby take her first trip in the TARDIS, first going back in time to the time of the dinosaurs, accidentally stepping on a butterfly, and temporarily changing human evolution so that she's a completely different species. Don't worry though, the Doctor quickly fixes it and turns back on the butterfly effect compensator, a feature of the TARDIS we hadn't heard of before, but a very handy one. Although, wouldn't that have also stopped the whole Mavity situation, or does it literally just stop the repercussions of butterflies specifically? But once that's all done, then they head to the future and a space station filled with talking babies, where a scary bogeyman, made literally of the babies' bogies, stalks the corridors in the below level decks. The Doctor, of course, empathises with it, as it is also the only one of its kind. And it hasn't actually hurt anyone, it's just scared some children. So of course the Doctor saves it when the children's nanny tries to kill it. During this adventure, Ruby somehow brings the snow from when she was left as a newborn baby on Ruby Road to manifest on the space station. And the Doctor's memories of being present on that night change, so that the cloaked woman who leaves Ruby at the church now turns and points at the Doctor. The Doctor tells Ruby he can't ever take her back to that night to discover who her mother is, and instead they go see her adopted mother, Carla, and her adopted grandmother, Cherry, back on Christmas Day. Oh, and of course, we have a Susan Twist cameo, being one of the recorded messages from the former adult crew that were ordered to abandon the babies on the station. Susan Twist is, of course, a real-life actor who is in most of the episodes, if not all of the episodes, this season, as different characters, and there's a whole mystery about why that is the case. So we'll be checking in on all of her appearances in these episodes. Then we get the Devil's Chord. Ruby says she wants to see the Beatles record an album, so the Doctor takes her to Abbey Road, 1963, to do just that. But there they find the Beatles are recording just terrible, terrible songs. As is Cilla Black, and as is a symphony orchestra. Turns out that a powerful entity known as Maestro has claimed all music in the world for themselves, literally ripping it out of people in the form of floating musical notes. They were summoned in 1923 when a piano teacher named Timothy Drake, no, not the Tim Drake that was Batman's sidekick Robin, a different Tim Drake, played the Devil's Chord and freed Maestro. We find out that the Maestro is the Toymaker's child. The Toymaker, of course, from the episode The Giggle and all the way back in the First Doctor's era. And Maestro has a child of their own, the Harbinger, who takes the form of a small child that is seen at the beginning of the episode, tricking Timothy into playing the Devil's Chord by posing as a student, and also still around at the end of the episode, so probably not the last we'll see of him. During the episode, while standing on a rooftop, the Doctor points towards Shoreditch and tells Ruby all about how another version of himself is living there right now, in a junkyard with his granddaughter Susan. Of course, referring back to the very first episode of the show in 1963, where it starts with just that situation before Susan's schoolteachers follow her back and discover the TARDIS, leading to many adventures through time and space for the four of them. This is the most Susan has been mentioned since the 20th anniversary special, The Five Doctors, and perhaps could indicate that we might be seeing Susan again soon. To defeat Maestro, another lost chord must be played, and the Doctor almost gets it, but gets the wrong last note. But it's okay, because Paul McCartney and John Lennon from the Beatles play it and banish Maestro. However, earlier, while they were music battling with Maestro, and Maestro had Ruby strung up, trying to extract the song within her, it snows inside again, and the music inside her is the music that played the night she was left on the church. This freaks Maestro out, and she starts asking why he was there that night.
The oldest one? On the night of her birth? He can't have been there.
The season twist in this cameo took the form of her being a tea lady at Abbey Road studio, but neither the Doctor or Ruby really look at her, only interacting with her with their backs turned to her. One more important thing in this episode is that they very casually mentioned that, as far as Ruby is concerned, back home it's June, which means 6 months have passed for her between the episodes 1 and 2. So they've been having adventures for 6 months already? No wonder they already seem to know each other quite well in this episode. For instance, Ruby says to the Doctor at one point, "You never run," as if they've been in lots of situations where someone might run. So this means there's a gap between episodes 1 and 2 in which we can place some expanded media stories. But there's going to be a bit more pertinent information that may affect this in Boom. So let's get to that episode, shall we? Boom. A story where the Doctor is stuck on a landmine and has to remain very, very calm. This story, from Stephen Moffat, brought lots of returning elements and references to the show's past. The people doing the fighting are the clergy-type army we've seen in previous Moffat stories, Flesh and Stone and The Good Man Goes to War. The weapons were manufactured by the Villengard Corporation, who the Ninth Doctor had first mentioned during the events of the Doctor Dancers in Series 1, saying that he'd blown up a sonic gun factory of the company's and that there was now a lovely banana grove in its place. Villengard is also the place where, at the end of the universe, the Dalek Rusty resides. There are also references to the Series 5 episode The 11th Hour, with the Doctor mentioning fish fingers and custard, and the Doctor meeting mud monsters, like he did in the 13th Doctor story, The Witchfinders. The Susan twist role in this episode is the biggest yet, with her playing the AI on the ambulance machines. For the first time, the Doctor spends a good amount of time looking at her. Ruby less so. She sees her, but she is laying on the floor, unconscious, for a large portion of this episode. He doesn't yet notice that she's been elsewhere, he has been, but he will next time he sees her. Ruby is shot, and once again, snow manifests itself around her. One important thing to know about the timeline placement in this episode is that the Doctor mentions that this is Ruby's first time on an alien planet, which means that in over 6 months of travelling with him, they didn't step on an alien planet, which is strange, but okay. That means that the 6-month gap between Space Babies and Devil's Chord can only be filled with stories set on Earth or on spaceships. Or space stations. But that does mean that the Doctor Who magazine comic Mancopolis that we covered in the last episode of this series can indeed be put in that gap. 73 yards. 73 yards sees the Doctor disappear after they disturb a fairy circle in the Welsh countryside, forcing Ruby to resume her life on Earth, but stalked by a mysterious lady who follows her everywhere, always 73 yards behind. She can't get any closer, and when Ruby gets anyone else to approach the woman, they always glance back in horror at Ruby, scream, and run away, never wanting to see Ruby again. This happens with her mum Carla and Kate Stewart of UNIT. We see her living her life with this woman always there, and at age 40 she notices politician Roger Gwilliam rising to power, a name she recognises from the Doctor accidentally mentioning that he brings the world to the brink of nuclear Armageddon. She also thinks he has something to do with the fairy circle, as he mentions on TV once having the nickname Mad Jack, a name also written on a paper within the circle. She infiltrates his campaign and eventually brings him down by putting him in place to talk to the mysterious woman 73 yards away, so that he runs away and hides, quitting as Prime Minister. Eventually, Ruby ages to old age and dies, seeing the woman one last time before she does, and seemingly becoming the woman back in the past, watching her younger self on the cliff top with the Doctor, and this time manages to change things so that she doesn't break the circle. There are many interpretations of this whole episode. Was the woman always Ruby? Is Roger part of the circle curse or not? I've made a video all about that, so do check that out. In the aborted timeline, Ruby meets Susan Twist's hiker character on the cliff top and for the first time recognises her from somewhere but can't quite put her finger on it. While she doesn't remember the whole timeline, when the reset happens, there are hints in her subconscious that she may remember some things kind of vaguely. For instance, at the end of the episode, she says she's been to Wales 3 times, where in the same scene at the beginning, she said 2 times. We'll leave it there for the TV episodes and catch up with the remainder of the episodes in the next edition of this programme, but let's move on to the comics. The Titan Comics Free Comic Book Day issue. The Untitled Free Comics Book Day issue of Titan Comics Doctor Who line is their first to feature the 15th Doctor. The Doctor and Ruby start in the TARDIS wearing the same clothes as they were in the Doctor Who magazine comic Mancopolis. The real-world reason for this is likely to be that they were given the same reference photos, but potentially, in-universe, this story could take place immediately after Mancopolis. Either that, or they just happen to both put on the exact same clothes on another day. Ruby doesn't set foot on an alien planet in this story, so it would also fit in that time frame between Space Babies and Devil's Chord, and before Boom, where, remember, Ruby is said to have never stood on an alien planet before. In this comic, the Doctor picks up a sound in the time vortex and follows it. The sound has dipped in and out of the vortex at various locations familiar to the Doctor. Skaro, the home planet of the Daleks. Metebelis 3 from the 3rd Doctor story Planet of the Spiders. Crop Tor from the 10th Doctor episodes The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit. The Library from Silence in the Library, and Trenzalore from The Name of the Doctor, and The Time of the Doctor. The Doctor therefore concludes that someone is trying to scare him. The sound eventually leads them to 1739 York, and there they encounter notorious highwayman Dick Turpin, whose hand has been augmented with cyber technology, a fact he uses to his advantage to escape execution. The Doctor chases him down and removes the cyber hand, leading to Dick's recapture. As he faces execution once more, he assumes a mysterious benefactor who bequeathed him the hand will help him again. But the mysterious man in the crowd does not, and Dick Turpin is executed as history records. The man seems to capture the scream of Dick Turpin as he is executed in a bottle. The scream is the noise from the vortex that the Doctor followed. The mysterious man, or by the looks of him creature, appears to have a whole room of captured screams. No doubt something that will play into the ongoing arc for Titan Comics. The Doctor analyses the cyber hand back in the TARDIS and discovers some coordinates programmed within. Maybe he'll be following those coordinates in the next, first proper issue of the Titan Comics series. Now, depending on if the next issue looks like it's following directly on from this, and if they go to an alien planet, it may move the placement of this story in the 15th Doctor's timeline, but for now, I'm putting it in between the Doctor Who magazine comic Mancopolis and the TV episode The Devil's Chord. Doctor Who magazine comic The Hands of Fear Part 1. In roughly the 15th century, it is the height of summer and an ice storm approaches Copenhagen, Denmark. Skirting the edge of that storm is the TARDIS, which crashes into the side of a ship. The Doctor thought he was taking Ruby to a modern-day Denmark to go clubbing, but it turns out that this is a time storm and it has swept them up within it. The locals call forth Hans Christian Andersen, the historical figure famed for writing fairy tales including The Little Mermaid. The Doctor instantly recognises him and recalls that he gave him the idea for the Emperor's New Clothes story, a claim previously made by the first Doctor to Ian and Barbara during the events of the Romans. So from the Doctor's perspective, this must have happened a very long time ago, presumably to the first Doctor. The Doctor, referring to the snow falling, says to Ruby that it isn't like the snow they have seen before, possibly referring to the snow that sometimes manifests itself around Ruby in times of heightened danger or emotion, as we've seen in several TV episodes. So this may mean that the story is set at least after that has happened a few times to them. So it could even be after Boom. From the storm emerges a figure who the locals call, and I'm bound to butcher the pronunciation of this, Snedronigen, which is Danish for the Snow Queen. She seeks vengeance on Hans for stealing her stories for his books. She sends an ice beam in the direction of Hans' child, but Ruby jumps in the way and is hit instead. To be continued. And that's it for this month. This is what I'm thinking the 15th Doctor's timeline looks like at the moment, but of course, that's always subject to change as we learn more information. What do you think? And which of these stories is your favourite so far? Let me know in the comments down below. Next month, we'll cover the rest of Season 1 on TV, another issue from the Doctor Who magazine cover, and issue 1 of the Titan comic, and, if I finished reading it, the first 15th Doctor original novel, Ruby Red, by Georgia Cook. In the meantime, check out the first edition of this series covering the Church on Ruby Road and the first arc in the Doctor Who magazine covers by clicking on screen now.